Hi, this is Marshall Sponder, author of Social Media Analytics, and I'm here today to talk about social PR analytics, particularly as it pertains to internationally in Mexico. So let's get started. I'm a analyst and an author and blogger, and speak internationally with companies and individuals who want to better use their data. And one of the things I really want to talk to here is the sense that in a PR space, I've worked a bit, but I also haven't necessarily always felt that this space was the optimal use for analytics, even though it is very strongly ingrained these days, and many agencies want to learn how to use social data. I have found that there is often an issue with companies that come up with messaging and wanting to validate that messaging versus altering the data itself. And so I think one of the things that I see in the social space is the need to contend with a conflict here between spinning information and measuring it. But the key to success in life in general, I think, and for particular campaigns, is indeed having the right communications. And how you envision and frame things are crucial to whether people will adopt them, buy them, use whatever you're pitching. It has a lot to do with how it's communicated. So I realize very, very much so that communications is crucial, and PR is really about communications. Public relations, that is very much about communication. So if we talk about the uses of communications and data, social public relations encompasses several platforms and use cases. We have consumer research, we have PR monitoring and support in social campaigns, as you can take a look. And the needs for doing these basic things would suggest different platforms that we might use in order to do them well. Different things will become important depending on which platforms you're using, and perhaps you'll need more than one. And another thing that we have to deal with a lot in public relations is the inclusion of big data, because there's just so much information out there, and the ability to parse it and chop it up and get something in almost real time now that can affect how companies operate and what they do is extremely important to a lot of your clients, and the agencies themselves may need to understand something about big data as well. Typically this is more in the back end, the IT department, but definitely agencies need to deal with this. Yeah, but there's a problem, and there's a talent crunch in public relations and a cultural issue with the idea that you can go in and acquire talent and then just throw them into the same box. I think this is something that epitomized to me a movie I saw as a kid called Attack of the Crab Monsters, which had radioactive crabs from a nuclear bomb, typical 1950s movie, and the crabs were growing and getting intelligence by eating the heads off of victims, much as I suppose headhunters go and try to find people for their clients, and potential, and where they also pull people out of. So my feeling is that in a lot of cases companies have brought in talent, but they haven't really worked on the environment and the corporate DNA culture that really is probably a bigger problem than the talent issue. And I think this is a big issue in PR, because I think that the marriage of data and public relations is a shaky one at best, and a lot of care needs to be taken in how it's done and how it's run. Now, having said that, you'll find that the need to have varied platforms, especially on the agency side, because there's so many different use cases where you might just find one tool is very good, but not so much another. And you can see that we have at least 6 use cases here that generate 6 different types of platforms that have 6 different types of readouts, and that's probably conservative. And then there's a real sense, I think, that if you're good at something, does it make sense to expand out to things you're not good at as well? I mean, if you are a conglomerate and you buy up a lot of companies and then eventually offloading those companies because they take away your core competency, it might be equivalent to say if you're a communications company, you certainly need to be aware of social media and you certainly need to embrace it, but to report on it, which your clients may want, may be better done by a third-party agency or partner rather than trying to do it yourself. And it's an argument I made in my book on social media analytics that I think there's too many areas where there's a conflicted need to report on the success of campaigns that may interfere and actually take you away from doing the best campaign you can. And I think that's where communications agencies should focus on, is in stay with communications and let measurement be done by someone else. Now, having said that, there's a good reasons for that, because if you look at the territory here, here's social, a map of just, and this is a high-level map of the different areas one could find platforms that sit well in each platform. You have data, commerce, curation, applications. There's just a lot here what one might need to want to look at and master. And it may be that different clients and different pitches might require different combinations of these tools, or perhaps some that aren't here. And we're not just talking about social, we're also talking about mobile as well. If you look at a bunch of mobile platforms, it's almost a nightmare. So certainly a large landscape to master. So if you take the social, the mobile, and now the search, you've got actually quite a bit of data that you can pull in, but also quite a challenge in finding out which are the right ones for any particular client, and effectively marshaling them together to something useful for the client that also preserves the contract and the relationship. And I think that's very challenging to do. So I see these things as really being better off offloaded in a lot of cases. There are some glimmers of hope, however, in some companies in the communication space that are doing big data projects, such as Dash's Group and W20. They are doing some projects and creating readouts that seem to draw on social data. I think the jury's out, though, whether any of these are really that useful, or whether they're just a pony show, really, to get bigger clients that want to cut and dice their data. I still argue that this might be better done by third-party companies. But maybe the culture will change. It's time. I mean, one thing that's clear is that the data on social, it's not clear whether social can be used as a replacement for panel groups. Primarily because you don't know who your clients really are online, and you don't know if they're representative. Here's a study that shows the differences between 2 industry segments, automotive and cosmetics. In the case of the automotive, there was a strong correspondence between online buzz in this study and offline word of mouth at the water cooler. For beauty products, in this case, not so much. Very, very little, in fact. In fact, almost none. So the answer is, if you're Ford or GM or Chrysler, using social media to monitor and then find out what people are saying online as representative of the voice of the customer may make sense. If you're proactive, not so much. And then I think to make this all effective, you'll probably want to look at, as an agency or as a practitioner in PR, where your clients are most active and where they need to be spending their energy to be most profitable, and then find a strategy and a measurement partner to tie into that can provide metrics around those things. And sometimes you may have to change the business strategy a little bit to make it measurable. So those are things that you need to examine, and that's something I think best done independently outside of the PR purview. You also need to consider how mature your clients are, who you're dealing with. Are they really just beginning to use social media, or have they internalized it? And also, to what extent they can profit from the use of social media, because what we've been seeing, and certainly what this chart shows, is that the more collaborative a business is with their social data, the more they can mature and get return on investments on it. And certain activities such as monitoring, which are very much ingrained in PR these days, aren't particularly profitable. Research a little bit more, but very labor intensive. These both activities that are very labor intensive are often not that particularly profitable, mostly because the data in social is unstructured and there's a substantial investment in cleaning it and organizing it before you can do much with it. And that's something that's often not considered until it's too late. And then if you want to just look at the last part here, I want to talk about planning for success. This chart shows a attempt to answer who, what, where, when, and why that I think is often missing in measurement programs. I mean, I think it's important to get this from a customer, and even if it means having a conversation that they may not necessarily be comfortable with on the onset. You need a business plan and a measurement plan that works well. And the issue is, in order to get to that, you may need to have the kind of conversation with them that you can't have. And as a result, you may find that it takes time to develop and find a client that is willing to use social data, not so much exploratory to find out what people are saying about them or their competitors or an industry segment, but rather strategically to talk about things such as this, like what exactly do they want to track, what would they do differently if they had that information, and what's the threshold of it. Certainly you can consider looking at social media measurement and return on investment most tangibly if it can be connected with the sale itself. Here's an example of the iPad with Square connected to it, which is a service that allows you to take transactions directly. If you can tie social with that, you can get ROI. And here's a template for those of you that want to use to have that conversation, fill out this plan. I did it with my students at Rutgers, and I got some amazing stuff. And with that, I guess I want to tie up and say I'd love to continue this conversation with those of you who want to reach out to me. You can get a hold of me at webmetricsguru.com. I also have a website, smabook.com, for the book. You can get a hold of me by Gmail or by Twitter at webmetricsguru or at smanalyticsbook, and I'd love to hear from you and possibly work together in some way. And with that, I am ending. Have a great day. Cheers.